Little late on this, but with it being less than a day till 3.5 does launch, and so does the first half character Hysilens. Today I'm here with the should you or should you not summon for Hysilens, where I go over reasons why she's really strong in her archetype, and really the reason why it's going to be really strong going forward, things you want to consider with her, and then reasons why you should and should not summon. For a brief overview now, going over what she does, why she's really good. So, as we do know, Hysilens is going to be the newest addition to the Dot archetype, and is also going to be the reason it's going to be really strong, especially being paired with the newly buffed Kafka. Hysilens is going to be the main DPS pretty much of the actual archetype because she's inflicting the most, so technically counts as the most damage, but whatever you use to proc it is also considered the main DPS. So the biggest core thing is Hysilens herself inflicts every single type of dot. So she can inflict wind shear, burn, shock, bleed, and so on. She's able to have all of them inflicted. She will prioritize the one that hasn't yet been inflicted. So now anytime the enemy attacks, if you have these stacks on them, they're going to take a lot of damage. And this is not only good for when the enemy acts, as we now have more sources of proccing dots thanks to Kafka being able to proc it through her follow-up attack, still the skill and also the ultimate. Now, instead of Kafka just proccing whatever dot team you're using right now, which is going to be through Kafka's Shock and usually Black Swan's Wind Shear, it usually didn't do too much. It does now, especially with the buff Kafka, you can do a good amount. But with Hysilens inflicting all these kind of dot states, especially Bleed, which she can inflict not only through her talent, but also if you ever break, and Bleed is really the best form of dot as it's max HP based. Dot procs do a lot of damage now, way more than they ever did, because you're not only proccing like the 1 to 2 states they do have, you're proccing every single state. Not only that, but Hysilens herself has really good debuffs for the team, making enemies take more damage through her skill, which is fully AoE by the way, so they will take more damage, which means everyone on your team, including Hysilens herself, will do more damage, and that does include the dot. Not only that, but Hysilens also has a zone which make enemies have less attack, so they will do less damage to you. Dot units are very squishy, so this is really good for even sustainless runs. And even not stainless, if you get targeted a lot in dot, you could end up dying, so the lower on attack is very, very good. And to top it all off, that zone has a 25% defense shred. So you're also going to make enemies take more damage with their skill, and in the zone they'll have defense shred, so you do even more damage. Defense shred also becomes significantly more strong when you pair it with other sources of shred / ignore. Pioneer set provides a good amount of ignore for dot. If you have light cones providing shred and or you have Black Swan skill, you can get up to insane amounts of defense shred, which is going to amplify dot damage by a significant amount. And also can make the initial hit, like not the one that is proccing the dot, the actual initial hit do some decent damage. Dot characters, their actual impact does very negligible damage, but with all that shred and all the vulnerability you can get on the team, you can actually make them take pretty solid damage from actually just hitting them. And if you thought that was enough, not only does she have the ability to inflict every dot, not only does she make enemies take more damage, make enemies do less damage, and also shred their defense. Two more things, she also makes enemies take their own physical dot equal to 80% of her attack when they do act in her zone. And her ultimate also procs dot. Her ultimate is also fully AoE, and the multiplier will let it produce damage equal to 150% of the original damage. This is higher than every single Kafka proc. You don't get it as much, obviously, because Kafka has multiple sources. She's the main procer, but when you do get Hysilens' ultimate, you straight up actually just do insane damage. That proc you get from Hysilens can do anywhere from 1.5 million plus. The damage you do off that ultimate proccing all the dots is insane. So everything she provides is just so insane for the entire dot archetype. Not to mention her actual vertical investment is really good. Her Lycum can increase your team's speed while also being a good effect hit rate stack for Hysilens herself, and also make enemies take more dot damage. Her E1 is an insane investment, making all dots deal damage equal to 116% of the original damage when she is on the field, and also having a 100% base chance to additionally inflict one instance of a dot state that is identical and can coexist with the one she inflicts already. So pretty much every time you inflict a dot, you can inflict another one, which, you know, why? Like, if it was already good enough, that's insane. And the next vertical investment obviously would be E2, and her E2 is also pretty crazy because it also turns her into a somewhat support at the same time. She has a bonus trace where every 10% of her effect hit rate, it increases her damage dealt, and you can get up to a maximum of 90% damage dealt for Hysilens. Her E2 makes that effect apply to everyone, so if you have the full effect, you give that full effect to everyone on the team. So your Kafka, your Black Swan, or whatever setup you're doing, they're all going to do that much more damage as well. But now talking about things that you should consider for the dot archetype. Hysilens is very strong, but you very much want to actually have characters that do work well with her. Hysilens herself is not going to function insanely good, and one thing to consider, which a lot of people are saying, oh, can I just use Hysilens herself? Can I use Hysilens without Kafka? No, you really do not want to use Hysilens without Kafka. Hysilens without Kafka is still very, very much disabled. She's one of the only other characters that do have a other form of proc, but she gets it from her ultimate, and she does not get her ultimate insanely quickly. Kafka is still the cornerstone of Dot. She is the one that's going to be proccing all these stacks a bunch of times. Hysilens without Kafka is going to be very, very, very mid. Hysilens with Kafka is very broken. So that's the whole thing you want to consider with the Dot archetype, is a lot of their units are relatively premium. The best team for Hysilens is going to be her, Black Swan, Kafka, and the best sustain is usually Popo. And if you're subbing out the sustain for a sustain this, often it's going to be someone like Ron, May, or Robin. And the last thing I do want to mention for the Dot archetype, I did already talk about this a bunch with the actual Kafka should you summon, but there's always the risk of it being prone to falling off because there's a bunch of issues of enemies not attacking enough or attacking too quick to kill you. This was solved since Kafka actually has a lot more Dot procs. Hysilens has one that you can get pretty decently often, but not that often. But the issue still does have its standing. Another thing to consider is that before Kafka's buff in 3.4, the last buff was 2.0 with Black Swan. There's no telling that if they're going to do that again, and there's just going to be no buff for Dot, and they fall behind again, and you're just stuck to like 5.x. For some reason, they like to look at Dot as the archetype that just, doesn't get much changes, so there's no telling that it's going to happen again. Usually all the shine goes on to something like Hyper Carry, which, is the most traditional form of teams. But yeah, Dot doesn't really get much. It's only now getting these two, and that might be all it gets. It's going to be good, especially if you have both Kafka and Hysilens for a while, but there's no telling when enemies end up having too much HP. They have a gimmick that might deal with it, and no one really helps. So that's just something I want to throw out there for you to consider, as Dot is probably one of the two tied archetypes to have that problem, the other one being Break. Unless you're Boot Hill for some reason, that guy's still going strong. So yeah, that's something I do want to throw out there for you to consider. Now bringing you on the reasons why you should or should not summon. Starting it off with the reasons why you should summon is if you already have Kafka, you like the Dot archetype, and you've been waiting for it to finally come back. Obviously, this is your moment. Definitely pick up Hysilens if you're a Dot fan. Maybe you still use Dot to this day. Maybe you're a freak and you use Dot before Kafka even got buffed. If you are in that category, obviously, I'm not even going to give any other sorts of reasons. You're finally getting your buff. Go pull for Hysilens. If you don't have Kafka, but you're willing to get Hysilens and Kafka, they're rerunning beside each other, so you're going to have to have a good amount of pulls, unless you're, a venture in IRL. If you're able to pick up both, and you know you can pick up both, then I definitely would recommend picking her up. Because obviously, both of them go well together. You don't want to get just Hysilens without Kafka. It's going to be a big difference, trust me on this one. Dot without Kafka is really, really bad. And you're also maybe someone that doesn't really mind the chance that Dot might fall off again or not get a single update for the longest time. Maybe you really like Kafka, Hysilens, the Dot characters, and so on, and you still do need a second team. Then you can build Dot as your second team, as again, Hysilens plus Kafka is really strong. Just be sure you can get them together. While both Kafka and Hysilens have really strong vertical investment, you don't have to look too much to getting them. You definitely want to mainly just pick up E0S0 Kafka, then E0S0 Hysilens, and then you could focus on vertical investment after that. Now, reasons why you shouldn't summon is pretty much the direct opposite of reasons why you should. If you don't have Kafka or you don't want her, I really cannot recommend pulling Hysilens. Even though there are setups that may work without Kafka, it's really just not worth it in the long run. You're not going to have a great time in a few patches from now, especially when Dot stops getting focused, potentially doesn't get another update, and also doesn't really get any buffs in the endgame modes. You are going to be in for a horrible time. Another reason, maybe you already have two set teams that take you through the entire endgame. If you're especially a free-to-play / low spender, you don't really need to function on another team for that. So in that case, you're better off using that currency on a archetype that might be more set for the future, and or also just vertical investment in your current teams. And another reason would be if you are indeed relatively afraid about Dot potentially falling off and having that whole issue of, we're finally getting an update, because when Black Swan came out, Dot was crazy, but it fell off quick and then it was gone. Even though we thought Black Swan was the most broken thing ever, which she was insane when she came out. Dot was crazy, but, it fell off quick and didn't really get an update. Technically, the next one was E2 Xiaochu, but that's a crazy investment for a Dot character, just one. So yeah, if you really don't want to take the risk at dealing with that, obviously, there's a chance it won't happen, but at that point, you can just wait for a rerun. Then yeah, and then again, the biggest reason is if you want to get Hysilens, but you don't want to get Kafka, I really just recommend skipping Hysilens. That is the biggest core reason. And would it be the biggest like throw pick you would do? It's kind of like picking up the break team, but not using someone like Harmony Trailblazer or Fugue or something. Kafka really is that cornerstone that's going to hold the team together, and both these characters together are really the cornerstone, but Kafka really is the one you do want to get. Kafka herself is the reason the team functions. Hysilens is the reason why the team is really good. So that's why if you really don't want to get Kafka, I would not recommend getting Hysilens, and that is the main reason, plus all the other ones I mentioned. That does wrap it up, going over why Hysilens brings a lot to the table for Dot, reasons why you really want her with Kafka, the potential dangers of Dot, because, you know, I just gotta mention it, because until we get proven otherwise, I'm going to keep saying it. And then reasons why you should and should not summon. Comment down below if you are going to be summoning for Hysilens. If you did find this video helpful, dropping a like would be greatly appreciated. If you're new to the channel or haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and turn the bell icon for future videos like this, along with all the types of star content, and I'll see you later. Peace out.